Hello and welcome to another episode of Our Own Devices. As we keep telling you, we are here to teach you something every time, and we have new guests that will, you know, and we have new guests who will take you on a new journey of knowledge. With us this time is somebody from a software that's become very close to a lot of us over the past few years, especially since the pandemic. And we have Derek Laney, who is the APAC Senior Technology Evangelist at Slack. And I'm sure a lot of you use Slack for work and even beyond work. Derek, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nandikapal. It's so lovely to be on your podcast. I've really enjoyed listening to them and wonderful to be a guest.
So, Derek, in my podcast, I am also just listening. So, I want you to do most of the talking. And let's start by asking you, in the world of Slack, how has the transition been from, pre-pandemic product to a pandemic product and maybe a post-pandemic product?
I think one of the most amazing things, Nandikapal, about Slack as a technology is that it's definitely the technology for the moment, but it was created before this moment happened. And really, we think it's a technology that, regardless of where you work, right now everyone is kind of in this weird hybrid work paradox where most of the people want to be remote, but we also want to come back in person sometimes, and we're trying to trade off these things. Well, Slack was created kind of before remote work, and the technology was less about where you were and more about how you work together regardless of location, and how to include everybody and get everybody aligned up and working together for the mission of the company, kind of working together. So it's about bringing everyone together for inclusivity, regardless of whether they're in the office or whether they're remote. But certainly, as you point out, the pandemic was a huge boom for the adoption of the platform. And so many organizations outside of maybe the technology companies that first started using a long time ago have started to adopt this new way of working. So that's been fantastic for us. For us as a company, we've always run on Slack, so that made a lot of sense for us. But we've certainly had to transform our ways of working as well.
I can tell you from experience, Indian Express being a 90-year-old company, actually, went to Slack overnight, when the lockdown came in. It's still what holds the entire newsroom together, and that's a big deal when I talk about Indian Express, which has not really been, at the forefront of cutting edge technology from a newsroom perspective.
Yeah, no, we hear that from a lot of media companies. Like, it's such a fast-paced business, and it's like similar to technology in that the speed of the business is so quick, and we need to change directions quickly as well. And I think this is what companies are looking for in this time where there's a lot of uncertainty, is the ability to have everyone aligned but able to change direction quickly. And I think a newsroom business and a technology business, there's a lot of parallels. So it's great to hear that you're enjoying the platform. I hope you're loving the changes as we make them. And we're not done yet. There's a lot more to do.
I always thought that one of the advantages of Slack is that it involves very little learning. Unlike what you would traditionally associate with a product that is used in an enterprise or a B2B environment. This is very similar to what you would use with your regular messaging communication. So people don't really have to learn something new to be on the platform and start using it. Is that really intentional?
I think there's two types of organizations. There's those that sort of existed in an old way of working, and they were like built on email and meetings as the primary way they got work done. And then there are those companies kind of similar to your own and like high tech companies that were maybe born on Slack. We're very lucky that so many of the engineering organizations and the startup community, they've kind of grown up with Slack. They're not 19 years old. They're maybe like 5 years old or even less. Some of them created during the pandemic. And I think this has created a bit of a two-speed way of working. And these organizations that have still not moved out of this sort of meeting culture and meetings as the primary way that we get work done, they're trying to learn from technologies like your own and like high-tech organizations about how they break out of this and unlock productivity within their company and move to these new ways of working that companies like Zomato and Razorpay and all these amazing great companies here in India that were born in Slack, they're moving at incredible speed, and everyone wants to be like that. And I think we've been very benefiting from a lot of that movement because everyone wants to learn how they did it and try and bring these ways of working into their own companies.
As far as the pandemic goes, you had literally a quick lockdown being put in most parts of the world. and maybe you had a little bit of time figuring out because you had a Europe and a US which maybe went in lockdown before other parts of the world. So how much of a transition did you have to make during the pandemic? How did you scale up? Because I'm sure you started seeing huge volumes come on to the platform also, literally overnight. And if I can ask you also, what were the biggest learnings from the pandemic?
Yeah, I think in answer to two of your questions there, yes, we saw incredible growth in the platform. Slack is delivering now, 300,000 messages every second. We have customers in more than 150 countries. And traditionally, this is a product that was kind of product led, which meant that people found the product, they started using it. India is one of our biggest users of the free version of the product, the free product. So adoption was really sort of high and driven through the pandemic. Now we're really excited that we need to work more with our customers. We're here in the market now, and we're trying to help them make the transition for their ways of working, not just adopting these new tools, but actually starting to change the way that they work. And I think you and these technology companies have kind of showed us the way when we think about how organizations like Zomato have broken down their silos. All of their teams kind of work together inside Slack. And this is very different to these older companies that are maybe still using email and virtual meetings as the primary way that they get work done. The reason why companies like Zomato have made email redundant is because they see that this new way of working is about working together within channels. And channels is a huge unlock for productivity. It enables you to think about all the different things that you're working on in the company as threads. And you can work on those, multiple of them at a time. It's very similar to how you work on many stories at a time. And each of those stories is kind of a long-running piece of work. It might involve different people, some of them inside the company, some of them outside the company. And we work in these threads together, but we can work on multiples at the same time. And this is very different to the old world. Like if you think about your calendar, how many slots do you have free in your calendar for the rest of the week, Nanda Gopal? How many do you have free?
Not many.
3, 5, something like this. Most people, it's like they can count
Yeah.
them on less than two hands.
Yes, absolutely.
You're working in this old way where you're needing meetings to get work done. That's how many things you can do for the rest of the week. And then you don't have any time to actually get work done, progress things. And then we also don't have this slow think time. You've heard about fast think and slow think. You need to have these different modes of working. And organizations like Zomato, these sort of fast-moving tech organizations, know this, and they allow their teams to work in this new way. And this is very similar to kind of how Slack works as well. And now Salesforce, the company that has acquired Slack just over 12 months ago as well, we're doing this at scale. It's the fast-moving companies like the Zomatos, like the Razorpays, but then it's also the biggest high-tech companies in the world like Oracle or Intuit or Salesforce, IBM. They have hundreds of thousands of people, and they had to do this same change as like Razorpay, but at like 100 times the scale, and unlock all of that same productivity in very, very complex, multiple countries, multiple ways of working, multiple business units. And so that I think that's what makes it exciting, that we're all kind of going through this together and we're sharing experiences.
In a way, Slack is like a full-fledged platform, right? In which people can work, they can access other tools, they can communicate. It's not a separate silo for messaging or communication, right? And is that evolution really taking place, as you say?
Yeah, I think it's good that you say that, but I think that you're in the minority of people who understand this about the platform. Tech companies and companies like yourself and early adopters, they understand that it's not just about being able to talk together or meet together. It's about using all of the platform that we have. A good example, Razorpay, India's highest valued fintech company, they have hundreds of integrations built into Slack. They use Jira, they use Confluence, they use Asana. All of these tools can be accessed in Slack. We did a study actually right here in India last October in 2021. It's called Reinventing Work in India. And we studied Indian knowledge workers, and we found that they're wasting about 43% of their time just switching between different applications, just this context switching as they're trying to bring all of the world together. And this kind of fractured world is like really biting into our productivity. Regardless of whether you've got single sign-on, you're still kind of dipping into these different applications and different contexts. So bringing that together is something that we call the digital HQ. And Slack enables you to bring all of these applications together, as well as all of your people, both inside the company and outside the company, to work together. Slack is where the work gets done. So there's already 2,600 different applications that are integrated into Slack. It's why most of the technology organizations have adopted Slack because of this integration. And now what's really exciting is that you can actually build on top of Slack. You can build applications for Slack, and even non-technical users. I think I have a stat here. Let me see. We have 80% of those people who build workflow within Slack, these kind of rule-based things, 80% of them are actually non-technical. So the Zomatos and the Razorpays, like they've got very technical integrations, but then there's normal users that are in HR or marketing or sales. And they need to build really simple applications for themselves. They can actually do that now in Slack. So this is why it's a platform for work. As you say, it's not just about kind of chatting or meeting, it's about getting work done together.
As an evangelist, do you really have to have chats with companies to tell them to open their world, their horizons on what is possible on the platform? Because even though it's very easy to use, but understanding how to use it, especially for a company which comes with a lot of muscle memory of doing things in a certain way, it won't be that easy, right? So how do you have those conversations?
Yeah, I think it's not just me; it's people like yourselves as well, and why we need to talk about this, because I won't tell you the name of the company, but I was talking with a company last week, and about 95% of everything that they were doing on our network, they were doing privately. They were doing in like direct messages, point to point. And that is just a missed opportunity. Like they are just losing the value of what having a digital HQ is about. So the role of the evangelist and talking to people like you and having you share the stories is that some of the key ideas that you need to understand, you need to understand these as well as the technology. And the first is this principle of open by default, which is that when we work, we create channels where the work happens, and then we share that unless there's a really good reason like security or compliance or other different things where we want to lock it down. We want to work as publicly as possible, because the more people who have access to what we're working on, the more likely that we're going to have serendipity. We're going to have the ability for people to discover information. I can get onto Slack and I can search for something, and instantly across the world, I have 100,000 people just within Salesforce and Slack, and I can find who's an expert in this area. What are they talking about? What are they working on? What applications have they been using? What's the data that they've been looking at? Maybe I need that information as well as just the answer to my question. It's like a human graph across the organization. It's like a grid of all of the people and the expertise and the data and the applications. And I can discover that if I move to this way of working that is more open by default. So my job is to try and inspire companies to change their ways of working so they can unlock the value, because I don't want them to become like that company that just is using Slack. They might as well be using another messaging platform. They're not getting the value. They're not changing their ways of working, and I think that's what's really important.
Opening up people, making things more transparent, especially in companies with a lot of legacy, is not that easy, right? Because a lot of people think that information is the power, and they don't really want to let go of that information. So is that something that needs to come from a top level up, or do you think it's a huge culture change for a lot of these companies?
I think all of the things you just said are absolutely true. And it's actually why that we wrote this book. This book is called How the Future Works. We set up a separate company called the Future Forum for this very problem, because we can build great technology, we can make it available to our customers, but we need the change to happen. And this book, How the Future Works, which is by the Future Forum, this is in collaboration with Boston Consulting, Slack, a number of other organizations. So they surveyed 10,000 individuals every quarter since the beginning of the pandemic, and they run working groups in all the major economies with the largest customers of Slack to ask about how they're doing these things. And they've written down those case studies in the book. It's a great one to pick up, jump onto Amazon and take a look at it. And it has a 7-step process for how to make this transformation. I maybe don't have time to walk you through the whole book, but some of the key things are exactly what you're talking about. It's moving to a principles-driven approach rather than a rule-based, policy-driven approach. It's about having a culture of experimentation. So not trying to know what the answer is and lock everything down, but saying, how can we run experiments and learn so that our goal is moving the ball forwards? Our goal is making progress. Our goal is not finding the answer today. And it also includes this idea of building a digital HQ, which includes things like unlocking the way that we measure people. If we're measuring them in the ways that you just talked about, then we're encouraging people to hoard information because we're saying your value is, what you know. And that's no longer really the case. I have the internet, I can type into Google, I can see all sorts of things. Hopefully in most of your organizations, you have, great platforms like Tableau who can access all your data through reporting and things like that. So you can find information and insights. So now those who have power in the organization, they are the people that have high empathy. They're the people that understand the customer. They're the people that can coach large groups of teams to be more productive. These are the new skills that leaders need to be successful. And these are the things that make you valuable. It's no longer about, what are the platforms that I can control and what's the data that I can keep for my team. You're never going to make the type of progress that we're seeing, with some of these companies who are moving so fast if you adopt this legacy way of working.
Slack as a product offers so much in its free version. Its free version is so good. How do you think people will make the crossover from using the free version to the paid version? And how do you have that conversation, for instance, with companies?
Yeah, we're really excited that people are using the free version. We want it to be valuable. We want it to be accessible to everyone. Everyone should have the access of these tools. There's also some things that are just by nature more expensive to run in the system. And when we start to move to the enterprise versions of Slack, the most important thing is the retention of information. The fact that we can talk quickly and we can come up with information, but I need that history in the future. And the next person who's going to do my job needs to be able to dive in and understand everything that happened. We're also bringing these incredible new tools to change the ways of working, tools like clips and huddles. We're really excited that the free version now has the ability to trial these applications and get to know them. But then the enterprise version has these accessible to everyone. And these tools are really key if you want to really make the enterprise transformation. So you can get a lot of value from the free version, and we love you to do that. But we'd also love you to try, thinking about this digital HQ concept and retaining this information for the future.
So, we spoke about how this openness is coming, into enterprises, into the system, a new way of working. But also this new way of working is having, for instance, analytics about how, people are using the platform. Now, this is not something that companies are used to see that how people are working. To have a lot of automation sort of built into the system, bringing in a lot of information from outside. This is one way we use, Slack, for instance, to keep a tab on what our competition is doing, having that plugged directly into our system so that we don't have to spend time going outside looking at, at what others are doing. But these are also new ways of working. It increases your efficiency. It gives you much more data. Now, how do you think companies are using this? Are teams using this effectively? Is this again something that you have to nudge people to sort of, understand and use better?
Yeah, I think you're doing a great job of that, and thank you for your example. I'll give you another example. We have a great customer here in India, Misho, and they're an e-commerce provider, and they need to innovate faster to keep up with the market. They need their platform to move quickly. And they do something very similar to what you just talked about. They use some of our integrations to bring feedback from customers into Slack in real time to their product teams. And then their product teams are working together across the chain, from those product managers, QA engineers, the engineers, all of those people working together with that customer insight in the same place. And that's why they're able to bring products to market very, very quickly. Everything is happening in those Slack channels. And things that used to take them days, they're now doing in hours. They can kind of turn around delivery. They can ship code faster because they have this real-time insights coming in from the customer, and they can act on those really quickly and agree on what the truth is. When we don't have this sort of platform, everyone's sharing information in different places. Our research actually said that 71% of knowledge workers say they have confusion in their workplaces because they don't know where the source of truth is. They don't know where information resides. When we're working in a channel, no matter where the information resides in the company, on which platform or which tool, we use these integrations to bring it together in channel and show it in one place with the team that we're working together. That's how organizations like Misho are able to unlock this new type of productivity to deliver faster.
One last thing, obviously you have a lot of focus on India as one of your largest and maybe fastest growing markets. If you could tell me a bit about, what's your strategy for India? What's your outlook?
I'm really excited about India. I think we have this incredible base of users, the passionate users who love Slack, that are using the free product. And we really want to educate them into how they can move to these new ways of working. That in itself is a huge opportunity. We also have some incredible development teams that are working for the company here. We have a research and development center in Pune for Slack. We're also part of Salesforce that has a very big presence here. So India is also providing a huge amount of the innovation. That team in Pune are responsible not only for some of our site reliability and some of the core platform that drives everything in Slack, they're also working on new features for the product. So there's a great feature called Huddles, which is kind of a replacement for co-working. Remember those days when you used to be in the cubicle and you would work side by
Yeah.
side with somebody and you would just shout over the cubicle, hey, what's the answer to this question? And we don't need a 30-minute meeting for that. We just quickly want to huddle and find the answer. On average, huddles within Slack are less than 10 minutes used by our customers, because this is the type of working that companies need to move fast. And this feature was actually worked on by the team here in India in Pune as a core part of our platform. So, India is important for research and development for us, but it's also, as you said, one of the fastest and most exciting markets. And as we start to see this move beyond the unicorns and the big GSIs like the Infosys of the world, and these big tech companies like Oracle and Salesforce and all of those types of users. And as it starts to get into the more general world where government's using it, financial services, utilities, all these other companies starting to use Slack, that's a huge unlock for India, and it's a huge unlock for our business as well. So we're really excited about that.
Thank you, Derek, for this very insightful conversation about a new way to work and maybe using tools like Slack to help you do it. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Nanda Gopal. Thank you for having me.
You were listening to Derek Lani of Slack. We'll be back again next week with another guest and a lot more of insights and knowledge. Till then, we are available everywhere you listen to your podcast.